Yo, what's up? It's Jimmy on from Glitchy Thumbs. Today we're going to be using character 2.4, the Salamander, or the Salamander, whichever name works best for this character. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you have a better name, leave that also in the comments. I'm going to be using this in Buildbox. Just FYI, I don't really build a mechanic with this. I just drag it in and try to get familiar with the FBX animations in Buildbox. Also, I like to lay things out just to see how they look like. So yeah, let's get to the video. So I create a new game. I always start with the 3D game because our FBX is a 3D model. I drag in the FBX, click import. This is going to be fairly quick to explain everything. This is character 2.4, the Salamander. He looks pretty cool so far. Go into the scene, click edit, turn off receive shadow, change the outline from white to black as always. Now we have the Salamander within Buildbox. I click into the character and you can see we have 5 keyframe animations. They all have the same names because that's what I exported it as in Blender. That file name is character2_4_body. That's why they all have the same name. If you want to have different names for each keyframe animation, you have to export them separately and then rename your file according to that keyframe animation. I'll demonstrate that in the upcoming videos. I drag in a if collide and I connect it to the start. The reason I do this now is because it eliminates the need for adjusting the collision shapes twice. So you can just do it all in one go, like killing 2 birds with 1 stone. What you do is change the physics to dynamic. That way you can adjust the start and if collide together. This just simplifies this part. This is going to be helpful for all of your characters if you're using that in Buildbox, because these are the hit points for each of your 3D models. I'm adjusting the collision shape right now. They all start as cubes, so you'll always have to scale them according to your character. Whether it's going to be long, whether it's going to be short, whether it's going to be tall, whether it's going to be wide, you always have to bring it in as close as possible to your character. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just try to get as close as possible just so that you can start testing your character and seeing what works and what doesn't. For the cube, I changed this to none because it's always set to dynamic when you start. And then all your keyframe animations, you'll have to check looped for all of them if you want to see your animation play over and over. Since there's 4 animations or 5 animations, what I did was duplicate the character 4 times, and then I just renamed them as 1, 2, 3, and 4. That way I know number 1 has a certain keyframe animation, number 2 has the second keyframe animation, number 3 has the third keyframe animation, number 4 has the 4th keyframe animation. I think one of these animations aren't part of the Salamander, so that's why I deleted the first one. If you've been watching my videos, you know that in Blender, when you export all the actions with your FBX, it pretty much consolidates everything into one, even if your Blender file has all the actions, including animations from previous characters. If you have it all in one Blender file like I do, then that's the reason why there's that extra keyframe animation. For number 2, I connect to the second keyframe animation. Then I delete the first one. That way, the second keyframe animation plays for number 2 of the Salamander. I renamed this to number 2 so I can actually organize this because the name is the same in the animation tab. That's what's confusing about it. During this time, I didn't really know how to change the keyframe animation name. That's why I was doing it this way. For number 1, we're going to keep it connected to the first keyframe animation. And then I just rename each of these as 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That way we can keep it separate. I should have renamed everything first during this time and then duplicated the character. That way I don't have to redo all of this and keep typing 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. But I was still practicing during this time. I didn't really use FBX files as much before, so I was a little bit unfamiliar with the process, and I'm a little bit better with it now. I definitely do it much different than this in the future videos. For now, you can actually see how I started and then the progress later on. I renamed this to 3 and deleted the other keyframe animations. I do the same thing for number 4, delete all the keyframe animations except for the 4th one, and then connect that one so that it plays that animation. We have one last keyframe animation to do, which is number 5. I rename this to 5 and connect that one. I drag each of them into the scene. That way I can see all the animations on the screen to see what we're working with, or to showcase all the animations that I've been working on. The way I visualize things is I need to see it all placed out, and then I'll be able to think about possibly a gameplay for this character, or even just have a video recording of all the animations that I worked on. Based on that video, I can use that to observe and analyze to see whether this character fits with any gameplay that I think of, or even as a secondary character to be a cameo in some games. That's what I'm doing right here, because this is the first time I have more than one keyframe animation. Maybe the last character. No, this is actually the first time I have more than one keyframe animation. So that's why I started to lay them all out and recorded a video for that. I saved this file in case I need to go back and refer to it. Click play, and we need to change the view to get it to a good view where we can see all the animations. You can see one of them is super distorted. It has to do with the bones that you set up in Blender. The animations are actually deforming your character based on the movements that you use. If there aren't bones in those areas that keep the 3D model in place, then you have this sort of weird stretching that goes on your character. If you're looking at the first one in the second row, where his head is a little bit stretchy with the animation, that's the reason why. That animation is actually not one that I worked on. That was probably just the animation from a previous character, and I applied it to this character, or it saved along with all the keyframe animations when I exported the FBX. I'm choosing a view so that we can see all the keyframe animations for the salamander. First one in the third row is actually the head stretch, or the head. I forgot the animation name already. This one where his head stretches up. It makes him look like a seal. That's why I called him the Salamander. It's a play off to seal and salamander. That's the name that I gave character 2.4. That animation actually looks pretty good for that head stretch, but that weird one with the twitching head in the second row, that's actually pretty funny. All the animations look pretty good. I delete the one in the second row, which was number 2, because that's not part of our list of animations for this character. We don't really need it. It just makes everything look bad. This is what I normally do with all my characters, to lay out all the animations, just so I know what animations I have. This is a good way to test your animations before actually working on your game. After you finished it in Blender, you want to know if it will actually work in your game engine of choice. The one I'm using is Buildbox. I have to double check if my FBX and my animations are working properly. Sometimes when you record keyframe animations in Blender, they actually don't come out right in your game engine. You definitely should test that out after you finish your character in Blender, which is what I'm doing. This is always going to be part of the process. You can't really skip it unless you're a professional and you actually have no issues with your animations where you don't need to double check them. For me, I'm not a professional. I'm pretty much a beginner, I would say, during this part in the video. Maybe not a beginner now, since I've been working with a lot more characters. I'm still practicing on the entire process. This is just how I've been testing my characters. I'm laying all of them out so that we can see all the movements clearly for character 2.4, the salamander. I put the first one in front because there's only going to be one animation that plays, whereas the head stretch and then it stays still. The back ones are actually the ones that loop. They definitely could just be secondary characters or background characters in some games that I use. That's pretty much what I think about for this character. I don't see any use for them for an actual game mechanic or them being a main character unless I revise the character and draw them a different way. For the purposes of this video, this is all they're pretty much going to be, just for the content, to give you some sort of starting point on how I got started and whether this is something you can completely skip. When you see the future videos, you'll see how I lay them out for animations, actually organize them much better in the future videos with actual labels. We're gonna need a better background to go with character 2.4, the salamander. I was trying to find something that's not really blinding to the eye. The blue looks good. This lime green is a little bit too bright in contrast to the grass on the floor. So I chose a much darker green. This looks weird, so I chose blue. Blue and green is actually a pretty good contrasting color, but then I decided to just color pick the same green. That way, everything is one solid color, and most of the focus is on the salamander. Adjust the view to get them more centered. Now you can really see the animations actually turned out pretty well. I'm actually happy with how the animations came out. If you want to see the Blender video on how I created this character, or you want to see the Procreate video, there should be a link below, so check that out. Let me know what you think. but I recorded the entire process just so you have an idea of how I created them in Procreate and how I created the 3D model in Blender and the entire process that I follow, from blocking out to UV unwrap to texture paint to rigging with Rigify and then to animation. You can see the entire thing on how I got to this final character that you're watching in this Buildbox video. Let me know what you think. It's a pretty lengthy process, but if you want to make your own characters, you should definitely check it out and see if that's something that you would like to do. This is pretty much the setup for showcasing the animations. To get this on my device, I go to File, Project Settings, enter my bundle ID, Export, iOS. And if you guys have been watching my videos, you're probably familiar with this process. It's pretty much the same thing that I do. Open the xCode project, select my team, add 2.4 on the bundle ID so that I have a different app on my device. Under bundle display name, put character 2.4, click play, and it runs to my device. I took this short screen recording from my device just so that I have this video that I can replay over and over if I need to remind myself of the animations for character 2.4, the Salamander, whether I want to expand upon him or not, or if I want to use him in the future, I'll at least know that he's available and what animations I have. That's pretty much it for character 2.4. That concludes the video for character 2.4, the Salamander or the Salamander in Buildbox. This was a short video because I started doing different things with my Blender and Buildbox workflow. I try to do something different every time so that I'm actually learning or practicing something different in every video. Sometimes I repeat certain things so that I actually remember what to do next time. This was a short video on how I lay out all my animations on the screen so that I know what animations there are for this specific character. I started doing a lot of this for my future characters or my current characters. That way I have a list in video form on all the characters that I have and what animations they have. That's something that's super important if you're working on a bunch of characters like I am. I want to get through as many characters as possible. Now I have a pretty good list of them. Now I just have to get closer and closer to that game that I actually want to work on and expand upon. Let me know what you think so far of all the videos, whether it's helpful, whether you find any of this educational, whether you like just watching my process. Anything, just leave it in the comments. Let me know what you think. See you next video for character 2.5. Peace out. We out.